Like you, I work with a lot of business owners, and they have figured out a way to create wealth, but they haven't quite figured out a way to keep that wealth, right? Accumulate and preserve that wealth. It's really striking because what they end up doing is they end up investing in real estate, end up investing in some exotic investments, right? And they start losing money, chasing more wealth, when if they just focused on creating the wealth in their business, which they've figured out and they can do well, and then preserving it, they would be so much farther along. Have you experienced this?
With my business owner clients, especially in Detroit, where many of them early in my career were tool and die guys, tier 1 and 2 suppliers to the automotive. They made a lot of money, had nice firms, a lot of employees. And where times were good, they assumed they'd always be good. So they didn't really focus on the plan B. The plan A was, well, when I get ready to retire, I'm going to sell this business. It's going to be worth a lot of money. And my question would always be, what if you can't sell the business? What's your plan B? Well, they would say, I know I can sell the business. I'll be able to sell it. Well, it's like guys who buy a lot of real estate. I had a client, the first things out of his mouth is, I don't know how you can help me. I got a net worth of $5 or $6 million. I don't have a lot of debt. I said, well, what's it comprised of? Well, $3 million was in a commercial building. $2 million was in his house. Not a lot of liquidity. He's 61. I said, how much rent do you get from your building? Well, I use it partially for my own business, so I don't really pay rent, and I lease the rest out. He was getting just under a 2% cash flow off this property. And I said, why don't you get rid of it? Why don't you liquidate, take the windfall, put it away for yourself for retirement, get out of the risk exposure, because you also have expenses along the way. The HVAC system goes, the roof goes, the parking lot needs to be repaved. You have expenses along the way. You're only getting 2% return on the money now, and that's an if come. You lose a tenant, now you just carry an asset, this big expense. So on the surface, he thought that sounded like he's wealthy, but he's wealthy on paper, but it's not doing anything for him. So, people have misconceptions. Then you have the problem of guys who have been so successful that they get bored. And then they have the midlife crisis. I'm going to buy a restaurant. Why would you do that? Have you ever run a restaurant? No, but I'm going to buy one. I looked into it. My accountant looked at the books. They make a lot of money. My first question is, how do you know you're looking at the accurate set of books? A lot of those guys kind of keep 2 sets of books. How do you know it's making any money? And if you've never done it, are you looking to work another 80 hours a week to keep on top of people that you don't trust and they're handling cash? They get these whims. So if I've learned anything, it's like sometimes you have to teach clients to be grateful for what they have, and then to grow what they have. To stick with what you know. Stick with what you're good at. Build wealth that way. Keep progressing. It's like an ascending staircase. We don't know what the riser's going to be, but we know what the tread is. It's the same. Every year I step a foot forward, I step up. How much up, I don't know, but at least it's up. It's not down. And if we stay the course and we show them how important it is to you plan for the worst, you hope for the best, right? What are most of them doing it? They're planning for the best and don't have a plan B for the worst. Yeah, we see it every day. And sometimes it's very difficult to get them to get their thinking around reality. And most people do very little in terms of risk management and personal finance. Big corporations have risk management departments. Every financial decision is flushed out and vetted for a range of results. Best case, worst case, and the worst case, can we live with it? That type of decision process. Individuals don't do any risk management. They don't even know what risk management is. They're just plugging along, making decisions, random decisions, adding to their balance sheet at times and think they're doing things fine. But do they really understand the risk exposures that exist that could pull the rug out from under them? They don't. And so as advisors, it's our job to kind of take time, be patient, ask all these good questions to help them understand reality so that they don't, involuntarily, and typically at no fault of their own, get a rude awakening when the external environment goes against them in any number of ways, right?
Well said. No, absolutely. And there are a couple things. There's peer pressure in terms of investing in other businesses or investing in other more exotic strategies. There's hormones that come into play. There's the hormones when you're younger and you think you're invincible and you've got money and you can invest in all these different, in your friend's company or in oil and gas. And, it's chasing that return. It's that constant chasing of return. And then the other side of the hormone equation is when you're older and you don't have the hormones that allow you to think as clearly. You might be more conservative because you're more afraid, but you're not thinking as clearly, right? So there's ego, there's peer pressure, there's hormones, there's emotional issues, there's the relationship that you have to money, and whether you believe that you're worthy of being wealthy. There are people that really don't believe that, and whatever wealth they've accumulated, they're going to get rid of one way or the other. I mean, there's so many factors in what we do, and you said it best. Plan for the worst and hope for the best. Have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D.
Yeah, well, I think it's important. What you just described is really human nature. Everybody's going to go through different, periods of emotions and different periods of thinking. Look, when I hit 50, before I was 50 years old, I didn't think a lot about my own mortality. I really didn't, because I was like, well, I'm not going to die for a long time. It's still average age of 86. Probably I'm going to be at least average. And then when I got over 50, I found myself in my quiet time just thinking and reflecting and saying, have I done the things I need to do? Are my own plan Bs in place? Are my family going to be taken care of? Have I properly planned for them so that they can carry on should something happen to me? I mean, I truly started thinking more and more of my own mortality and what that would mean to the people that count on. And the other thing is time goes faster the older you get. It just clips by. And we have this short period of time in our lives to build a plan and then stick with it. I've always said, if you get a plan and stick with it, it's better than a plan you can't stick with. I'd rather somebody committing to a thinner plan, a thinner commitment of putting money away for themselves, but something they know they can stick with. Here's a classic example. A CPA brings me a client a number of years back, and he says, Keith, I know you do a lot of advanced planning for people. And it was my CPA firm. So one of the associates brought me a business owner client who was making a lot of money. And the guy said, I want you to show my client here some ideas on how to put a lot of money away before tax, because he hates how much tax he's. And he was making maybe $1 million a year. I said, okay. Then I showed him a few ideas that were fairly creative, but black and white, just a little advanced. And the guy wanted to put away $450,000 a year. And I said, well, that's fine. Obviously, there's no reason for me to tell you can't do it, but I have a couple questions for you. Because any plan you start should be a plan you can stick with, at least for 5 years, okay? With minimal flexibility being built in. But if you start with that number, I want to know it's a number you can do for 5 years. I said, so do me a favor, close your eyes, and I want you to envision your business going through a tough time, and why don't you translate for me the worst it would be? What's the least amount of money you could put away, even if things were really tough? And he thought about it and he said, I can probably always do $150,000 a year. I said, well, that's what we'll start with, because I'm not going to be a co-author to failure. And just because things are good now doesn't mean they're going to be good in the future. So let's start that way. Let's go down the road a few years. And if things continue the outlook looks great and we want to hedge things up, we can modify. 2 years into the plan, I get a call and he's panicking. I just lost a couple big accounts. I can't do 150. I can only do 50. And I said, okay, well, I guess we just realized why it was probably good we didn't start at 450. And that's what happens. It's like when I tried to sell a client's business to a private equity firm about 12 years ago, things were great. They were making a lot of money. They had a $20 million pipeline in receivables and work product and WIP. And the guy said to me, him and his partner were taking out $1.5 million a year out of the business, net. We had qualified plans in place and other stuff. I said, why don't we sell this business? You guys are in your mid-50s. I think we can get you a lot of money. Things are good. That's the time to sell. And their response was, why would I sell for $20 million when we don't only get 10 and have to pay tax, and we're already making $1.5 million a year? We wouldn't be able to live. We wouldn't be able to duplicate our income for the rest of our lives. And he said, well, but they're willing to give you 20 now, and you guys could go retire and live a comfortable life and play golf and boat and do all the things you like to do. And not have the stress of 180 employees or the hassles of the bank when you're at a ratio. Got to come up with more money and lines of credit and all the rest of the crap that goes along with running a big operation. And they declined it, which was fine. It was their prerogative. I was just there 2 years later. The automotive companies started all downsizing. They're outsourcing to China and all that. You've heard all that. And most of the job shops and tool and dies in this town closed up. These guys narrowed down to a skeleton crew, kept about 12 employees out of 187 just to keep the doors open. Their income dried up. And the one guy came back to me and said, do you think those guys still want to buy our business? I said, no, that opportunity has long since been gone. But here's the classic human nature, getting back to your human nature and things that go into people making the right and wrong decisions. When things are great, everybody thinks they're always going to be great. Mm-hmm. Why would I sell now? I'm making a lot of money. It's always going to be great. Their plan B was to sell that business for retirement. Guess what? Not only could they not sell it, but they ended up having to sell their building and plant and downsize and restructure their business and learn to live on a lot less money.